So good morning and hello. My name is Tiffany Scroggs and I'll be facilitating today's session called You Won, Now What? We're delighted to have an expert speaker here today. I'll get to introducing Cory in a second. But first I wanted to give props and kudos over to the Port of Seattle and Emily Ho. They're one of the sponsors for today's session today. We're delighted to be in partnership with Emily. Emily, did you want to say a few words of welcome?
Yeah, I just wanted to say hello to everybody. My name is Emily Ho. I am the Community Engagement and Training Program Manager for the Diversity and Contracting team here at the Port of Seattle. We have specific goals of making sure that we are working with small and diverse businesses in terms of the amount of money that we spend and the number of businesses that we work for. So we're really excited that you're here today. I want to express my gratitude to Tiffany and Leslie for helping us put this on. This is just the very first of multiple sessions coming on every Wednesday for the next few weeks, as well as to say hello and thank you to Cory, our friends at Centennial, who is one of our jock contractors. The other one is GLY, I believe. Centennial, I think we've been working with for a while, and they've always been coming out to our different events. And I'm really excited to hear what they're going to share about. Okay, you're on one of their projects, ideally at the port. What happens then, and to help you be prepared for that. So thank you everyone for being here, and I'm really excited to hear what Tiffany and Cory have to share today.
Great. Thank you, Emily. Yeah, and welcome to Advanced Port Gen. This training series we're kicking it off today when we were brainstorming potential training topics. The first one that came to mind is we need to get firms better prepared to be successful long-term on the job order contracts that happen at the port and at other jurisdictions locally in Western Washington. And so I ran into Cory at an event and I thought, how about one of these types of events? And she jumped on the chance and I let her kind of take the lead on the content. And she knows the barriers that new contractors experience when doing business on a jock contract. So if you're on today, please type into the chat a little bit about your business and whether or not you've done jock contracting before. That'll help us kind of frame some of the remarks today. And if you do have questions, you're welcome to put them into chat at any time. You can also raise your little virtual hand and we'll call on you. We want this session to be about you and your needs. So with that, I'm pleased to introduce Cory with Centennial Construction Contractors. Centennial is a longtime company here in Western Washington that we've known for a long time. They are the job order contract holder for the port. And Cory, the floor is yours. Thanks for being here today.
Oh wow, now there's pressure. Good morning, everyone. So I'm really excited when I was approached about this class that we are going to get to talk about some practical ways for you to be successful long term on jock, and to kind of give you an idea of who I am and what we do at Centennial. My contact information, by the way, is on the screen now. I'll show it again at the end. I am the project coordinator and outreach coordinator for Centennial for port projects and other projects we have with other local entities, which means that I am often a first point of contact for you in getting to work with us, but also that you would get several emails from me, and I'm organizing all of the behind the scenes stuff that's happening. That's administrative and not project specific. What I want to say a little bit about Centennial, just so you know that we do have some expertise here. We were founded in 1991. Our first contract was with the Pentagon to do some renovations, and we now have 30 offices nationwide. We have 2 consistent offices in Washington State. That's the Seattle field office that I'm working out of, and then we have our sister office that is at JBLM. We also have a commercial clients group that operates nationwide, and they do projects and are currently working on active projects in the state of Washington. And more importantly than the fact that we've been around for a while, we've been operating in Washington State for 27 years now, is that we are completely motivated to work with small businesses. We have over 1,000 subcontractors across the country. That's part of our database. And more than 80% of our work goes to small businesses. We don't self-perform any work, so Centennial really needs our subcontractors to be successful, because when you're successful, we're successful. So just a little bit about job order contracting, and then I'll promise I'll slow down and not speak so quickly. Job order contracting is essentially an on-call type of contract where we have an indefinite delivery, indefinite quantity number of work orders that we're on call to perform. Usually these are like small construction, repair, or maintenance projects, a lot of which we do for the Port of Seattle. These are projects that often have fairly quick turnaround times and are below a certain dollar threshold. Currently, nationwide, we have 60 active contracts, but because we don't perform, like I said, we really need you to be successful, and that's where this training comes in. Oops. Too excited. Okay. So today we're going to talk a little bit about what I like to call the startup binder framework. It could be a physical binder. I'm a paper person, so I have a physical binder for things. It could be a digital binder. It could be a digital set of files. But a framework for organizing how you approach a project with a job contractor in general. And then with that in mind, more about Centennial and our work at the port. We're going to talk about safety. We're going to talk about project teams and talk about administration. And then at the end, we'll leave you with some tech tips. So the project starter binder is, I like to think about it in like 3 sections or buckets. We have the safety section, that's the top priority. We don't do any work unless it's safe. So it's the starting point for all of our projects. Then you'll be working with project teams, and you're going to have to learn how to integrate not only with Centennial's team or a job contractor's team, but also the other teams that are working on site from other trades as well. And then, of course, administrative. I am an administrator, so I'm a little bit biased towards this, but it is really the backbone of being efficient in the field of dock work, because there is a lot of documentation that goes along with it. And so we know, I'm happy to take any questions at any time. I just can't see the chat. So if you do have questions, feel free to ask them whenever they come up. But let's start with safety. So in the state of Washington, I'm sure you're familiar, we have a set of safety standards that we have to adhere to from the Washington State Administrative Code. I'll spare you from having to read each of these in turn, but essentially what they mean is that we have a clear, written, and easy to understand and follow safety plan in place for each of our projects, and general standard operating procedure as well. And that first aid and CPR training and certification is present on each of our job sites to make sure that we have someone who can respond to incidents as they occur. So there are several separate entities out there that you can go to if you don't have a safety plan in place that can help you develop general standard operating procedures and get those things outlined if you don't already have them. But we do start with, at Centennial, the basic documentation that's shown here. So essentially what that means is at the beginning, when you start your binder and you start in the safety section, you're going to want to have a couple of things. The first thing is a master list of safety data sheets. So SDSs are for hazardous materials. That could be anywhere from our Windex cleaner for windows all the way up to something more significant. Fuels and other solvents on site, those kinds of things. We're going to need to have access to those so that we can make sure we know how to handle any incidents that could occur if someone was, say, to be sprayed in the eye or whatever it is. And we also expect those to be on site. So we are going to have them in our safety binder on site, and we're also going to have copies of them here in our office. We need to make sure that we have these things for every project. So if there's stuff that you consistently use, like you're always using the solvent or you're always using this material, having a master set of this safety data sheet ready to go in your binder is just going to save you time, because you're going to have to send it every project every time. The other thing is the standard operation procedure for emergencies. We need to understand how you are going to respond to emergencies on site, and then how that works with how we respond to emergencies on site. And we also want to make sure that you've outlined who to contact if there's an event on site, or how to document or investigate an event if someone were to be injured or something else were to occur on site. And then I would also include any safety plans, any templates that you have. So each job is going to have its own specific safety requirements and its own hazards that need to be identified. But having these templates ready to go with your standard sort of trade aspects, the things that you would do consistently, like you're always going to do this kind of activity in every project that you work on, then if you have those already set out in a template, it makes developing each of these plans, which are required before you can start work on site, much faster. And so the reason I focus here on safety, not only because we have a duty to make sure that everybody who shows up on site goes home in the same condition they showed up in, if not better, if we can manage that, but also because we will have to delay the start of projects without these documents in place. And so having those things in place just speeds up your time and eliminates costs and delays for you. I should also say that for some of these things, like fall protection or confined space entry and excavation training, those things, Centennial offers training to our subcontractors. So if you don't have those trainings in place, we could offer those trainings, but you can also get those from a lot of other sources as well.
Hey, Cory, I want to pause you right there and let you know Emily has her hand raised. Emily?
Oh, awesome.
Yeah, Cory, I have a question. This is a clarification question and kind of stepping back. So the safety, this binder that has safety among those three different components, this is something that firms will need to have once they are selected for working on a work order or a job with Centennial. Just kind of zooming out a little bit, when does this binder need to be ready for what?
I would say that your binder needs to be a go-to for any project that you work with, for any jock contractor. I'm giving you kind of the idea of what it looks like for Centennial at the port, but a lot of this is transferable to any entity that we work with, or any jock contractor is going to have same sort of requirements. Because we're required by the state of Washington, but also because the same sort of risks can happen on any job site, right? Regardless of which contractor you're working for. So having this binder ahead of time with this sort of pre-made set will allow you to save time with every work order that you work on, every project that you work on, regardless of the contractor, because you already have a place to start. So I would put this together even before you're awarded a project. Hopefully you have something like this, but certainly at the beginning of a project, before you actually start a project, you need to have some sort of project start binder. And I'm just going to say that could be a physical binder, that could be digital content, but somewhere you're gathering all of this information so that it's easy for you to share. Because one of the things that I think some subcontractors have done is kind of underestimate how much communication they're going to receive, both from their general contractor, but also from other entities involved on site. And so really having that organized ahead of time will save you a lot of heartache when you're trying to respond and keep track of multiple different groups that are reaching out to you.
Gotcha.
Our safety team will reach out, our project managers will reach out, I will reach out. So there's at least 3 sources of emails coming your way. And we want to make sure that you're ready to go for the kinds of things that we'll reach out for.
Gotcha. So that is helpful in the context of like people have to send you a bunch of stuff at the very beginning,
Mhm.
right? To be like, hey, I'm interested in working with Centennial, all of that. And it's after that point of you're like,
Mhm.
okay, you're one of our partners.
Mhm.
You're on our list of folks that we might call. It's really like if you're on that list of folks that Centennial might call, you need to
Mhm.
have this binder. Is that
Absolutely. Yeah,
accurate?
absolutely. You need to have this just to make your life easier because these are
Okay.
all things we're going to ultimately ask for. I didn't put anything in this presentation that you wouldn't actually be asked for at some point. And so these are things just to have already ready to go that will make your life easier and it'll avoid delays so that you can get in, do your portion of a project and get out, keeping that timeline that you went in with the bid with. You know, we don't want to have any additional costs because we had to like slow down the process to get all of the information in the right place at the right time to start work.
Thanks, Cory. Those are my questions for now.
Of
Thank
course.
you.
Thank you. So, once you have kind of this like safety binder outline, then you want to go in and look at, I'm sorry, hold on, standard job hazard analysis. Um, these can be called a little bit different things depending on who you're working with. We call this an activity hazard analysis at Centennial, but it is consistent across the field, and that's where we're looking at what kind of hazards exist on site for this specific project. Now, you can't anticipate every site hazard ahead of time because obviously you don't know the project yet. But you can have a template ready to go with the kinds of hazards that you typically would encounter. So these would be things like that come up for the trade that you work on consistently. That could be things like fall hazards. Maybe you work on elevated platforms with scaffolding, things that come up consistently that you would want to plan for. Because what we want to do before we step on site is know that we've eliminated any potential hazard we can, and we've replaced any potential hazard with a safer option. And then we've also put in protections for anyone on site who could face a hazard. And so we will require this activity hazard analysis or job hazard analysis with each project because we want to ensure that everybody on site is safe. And then on site, you'll be asked to not only know about your job hazard analysis, but the other hazards that are on site from other subcontractors. And so there's a lot of integration that's happening here. So having a template that already has some of those, I'm always going to face this hazard because this is part of what I do, this is my trade, will help you kind of develop safety protocols or awareness around that then can be shared with our other subcontractors who will be working around you on site as well. Any questions about job hazard analysis? It's a lot. It looks like a lot. It's really not. It's just thinking through what do I do every day when I walk on site? What could I face? What could happen? And kind of planning for those eventual, like those potential incidents happening and occurring.
All right, this is Emily again. So this job hazard analysis, does it take the form of a visual like this? Is it what
Yeah.
form does it
So
need to take?
it doesn't have to take any particular form. At Centennial, we have a template that we can use that's like a columns. So we have, you know, what are the things that are happening on site? Can we eliminate them? Can we substitute them? Can we control for them? And then how frequently will they occur? Sometimes it's just like I have to do this one-off thing and it can be very hazardous. Sometimes it's every day, every time I'm on site, I'm going to be doing these things and these hazards exist. And so we kind of want to know how frequently we need to plan for those hazards as well, because then that will affect scheduling and who we will have on site because we want to make sure we're making the safest possible project when we're scheduling these things out.
this is a template that is available to your subcontractors to
Yes,
use and fill out?
yeah, all of our safety templates actually are available on our website. So if you go to cce-inc.com, there's a tab that says safety, and you can pull down every single safety document that we have. It's updated regularly because we have 30 years of experience and 30 different project sites to pull experience from. So we get those regularly updated, probably about once a quarter, once every other quarter. But you can pull all of our safety paperwork and templates are all available for anybody. You don't actually have to even be onboarded with us to have access to that. They're just available. So you're welcome to do that. And if you want, I can put that address again in the chat later on.
Yeah, that'd be great. That's great to hear that folks don't have to start from scratch when
Absolutely.
coming to these things. I hear anything that says analysis or like I see a fancy visual. I'm like, I don't know how to do that. But it sounds like
Yeah.
you already have done a lot of the homework that folks can kind of make their own.
Absolutely. And then you will also receive, once you're on a project with us, you will receive an example of other types of job hazard analysis from other similar projects. So if we had a contractor in the past do something similar, we might send you an ideal example of what that would look like in an analysis. So you can start to think through kind of your own work and your own process. Obviously, it's not going to be the same because no project is the same, but it'll be similar that you can pull from that experience too.
Thanks, Cory.
Of course. All right. So I like to push extra buttons. What else should be in your safety binder? You need to have first aid and CPR cards. So we need to know that there's at least 2 people on site at any time that are trained to give first aid and CPR. It can't be one because if that one person is the person who needs that CPR or that first aid, obviously they won't be able to receive it from themselves. So we want to make sure that we have 2 people on site at any time, which means we will actually ask for those cards and certificates to confirm that your employees have been trained. So keeping copies of those in your binder is helpful. If you have journey person or trainee cards, I would keep those in your binder as well because we will need to confirm the competent people on site and their training. So we will ask for those cards. Um, we also want to have certificates of training or letters of designation for any equipment that you might be using. So if you're using a forklift or an excavator, we want to make sure we have documentation that the individuals working on those have been trained properly, or if they haven't had explicit training but have had years of experience, we can accept a letter from the principal or owner of the company attesting to that training. So either one works. Having these things kind of already ready to go, having those certifications saved in one place will make it easier to send those out to our safety teams and make sure that we account for all of the training that's required. And again, some of the training that we might require, Centennial will provide at no cost to subcontractors. There are other options too. There are other training facilities around that can offer these trainings as well, but we often offer them once a quarter or more frequently if necessary to our subcontractors at no cost to them. So just so you know, if you're not sure, you can ask about it and we can get something, we can figure it out from there. We have a really awesome safety manager here in the Seattle office that is constantly going to trainings themselves and then hosting trainings here in the office. So we do have those resources if you need it. You're also going to need the equipment manuals for any owned or rented equipment on site because we need to make sure that those things have been properly inspected every day and then also that they meet the needs of what we're doing. We want to make sure that, you know, if there's a load capacity that we're not exceeding those kinds of things. So they'll be in our safety binders on site, which means our site safety and site superintendent will ask you for those things ahead of time. If you're renting the equipment and you don't have it until you get the equipment delivered, that's fine. But we will need a copy of those things just to make sure we have them. And so if you have equipment you own, keeping that copy available will be much faster for you as you get going. All right, that was a lot about safety. It's a big topic because we want to make sure everyone's safe on site. But are there any questions about anything I just kind of like spewed out at you?
I have a quick question.
Yeah.
Would you, are we making these slides available to our participants?
Yeah, we can absolutely do that.
Okay, so I would like to drop it in the chat for those that are in attendance right now.
Yeah.
Okay,
You can absolutely do that if you like. I think I also sent Tiffany a PDF version, which might be a little easier to
yeah,
upload.
we have one of those, so.
Perfect.
Well, and actually, Tiffany, if you could direct me to your version, I'll convert that into a PDF and then I'll drop it in here.
Yeah, you bet. And I think after this, we'll email out the copy as well, and then along with the survey and that kind of thing. So everyone should get a
Okay.
version that has all the live links and everything. So
All right, thank you.
yeah, and I see a lot of people put some their introductions in the chat, and I do have one question for you, Cory. It says, are there companies that you can recommend that offer assistance in creating the company-specific safety binders?
So I don't have direct experience with working with each of these companies from a subcontractor standpoint, but I will say companies, one is Exit List. They're actually out of the Portland area, but they work all along the West Coast. They help create standards, operating procedures, and safety plans. There's also Evergreen Training. They are a training group specifically for the kinds of hazards you might see on site, and they can help you create safety plans. They also have a lot of free or low-cost trainings available, so I would definitely look into them, and I can share out their direct contact information later on if you're interested. Again, Centennial's not specifically endorsing any of these individuals. These are just companies that we know of that others have used in the past.
Yeah, and I think also firms can join associations like the Association of General Contractors, there's the Association of Builders and Contractors, and some of them offer some training directly, or the network that comes with those associations can be helpful in finding kind of resources to fill out your team as well. So good. Thank you for that, Cory.
Of course, and then also ask your contractor. Your prime contractor wants you to have these things. They want you to be safe on site. They want you to be successful. And so please don't be afraid to ask if you want examples. We have so many to share, and we're happy to do that. We want you to be able to be prepared to be successful. So please ask if you have any concerns or questions when you start working with a prime.
Thanks, Cory.
Of course. So the next kind of bucket that I think of is our project teams. These are the people in my office, the project managers and the field engineers that are putting together schedules and running the overarching project. But they're also the people you have on site and the other subcontractors have on site. So it's collaborating with more than just your prime. Oftentimes I see people kind of approach this from a individual standpoint, of like thinking about just yourself on the job with that contractor, but really you're working in a collaboration with multiple other subcontractors at the same time. So kind of thinking about that ahead of time will help a little bit too, because you might have to communicate with more than just the project team in an office. Before you sign your contract, that's the start of every job, right? You get the award, we sign a contract. Theoretically, you will already know if you're going to have specific safety requirements. You will already know if you're going to have bonding requirements, those kinds of things, because we wanted to incorporate it into your bid. We want you to incorporate the time it takes to do the safety paperwork and do all this administration stuff into your bid. But if you haven't, Make sure you check if there are any payment prerequisites. Make sure you check if there are any submittal requirements, insurance requirements that are unique for this project, and if you're going to have to bond. Those are things that you want to make sure you outline very quickly before you actually sign a contract. And then you want to make sure that your scope of work is accurate, because our PMs don't always have the same level of expertise and knowledge that you do about what you're going to be doing on site. You want to make sure that your scope matches what you actually bid. You want to make sure that any exclusions in your bid are noted in your contract. And you want to determine if you need to arrange for any testing or inspections or permitting that might have to happen. If that's on you, you want to know about it ahead of time. Address any of those questions before you sign it. And I will tell you, as the person who sends out these contracts, I am happy to resend and get this nailed down so that we're satisfied with it. You don't want to get to a point where you thought something was in your contract and it wasn't, and then we have to deal with it at the end. We want to get those ahead of time, and no one will be upset if you're like really tuning into the details on that. You're also going to want to make note of the wage determination. We'll talk about that later when we talk about prevailing wage stuff, but there will be a date on your contract that will say when this project was awarded and what prevailing wage applies. Sign that contract and then make sure your field employees also get a copy of your scope of work, because they are going to be held to that document, that contract, by our site superintendents. So we want to make sure that they understand too what they're going to be asked to do in the field.
And I'll just, I'll just give a quick plug for the Apex Accelerators exist, and that's where Leslie and I work, and we help businesses navigate these contracts. And so we're telling firms all the time, read and understand what's in there before you sign. And if that's, if you want us to read it along with you, or do a separate read and then come together and compare notes. This can happen at the bidding time or the pre-bid, but also after award. We can go through and see, all right, what did you do here? What's in the contract that you have to comply with now, and kind of help you with that compliance and help kind of mitigate any costs that you might see there while you work to comply. So just a little plug for the no-cost technical assistance offered by Apex. Thanks, Cory.
Of course. And then also, again, please don't hesitate to ask questions of your prime. No one's trying to play gotcha. We want to make sure that everyone understands. So if you have questions, please feel free to ask them. And then once you've signed your contract, you should kind of think about what you should have in place. So things I would keep already before I even start a project or submit a bid are a couple of templates. I would have a notes template. So that every time I meet with a PM or a project manager or anyone else representing a project, I have the date, I know who was present, I know the important decisions that were made, and any questions that we still have that need to be addressed. I want to write that down every single time I meet with someone so that I can go back and reference it. And so I would keep a template for notes. You can set it up however you want, but I would keep a template for notes ready to go. So if you have an ad hoc meeting, all of a sudden you still have a place to write everything down. I would also make sure you know what to ask. And this can take the form of a template too. I like to have like a set of questions that I refer to when I start everything, and I write down these notes. But you want to make sure that you have a pre-construction or pre-work meeting with your prime, and you can ask for that, and they're happy to provide that. You want to make sure that you understand submittal requirements. Is there a specific place? The Port of Seattle has specific places where submittals get turned in, and there's a whole process for approval. So if you are part of that process, you want to understand it. If there are any software that you're going to have to use, some businesses like Centennial use Procore to organize folders and information. And so you want to make sure that you understand. And then if you need technical assistance on how to use that software, that you ask for it from people like me. And then anything else you will need to know. For the port, we often have to have badges, we have to have background checks, we have to have other aspects that need to be in place. If you're working in a specific area, you might need specific training based on the hazards that are there. So you should know if those are additional requirements that you want to be aware of. I would also remind you, you are not the only one working on site, and sometimes PMs lose track of that a little bit because they're organizing multiple people. So we want to make sure that when you see a schedule, that the PM has planned the number of work days that align with the manpower you've expected to produce on site and the frame that you expected to be on site. If you only plan to be there 2 days and now the PM has you mobilizing and demobilizing and mobilizing and demobilizing multiple times and on three separate times to accommodate other work on site, we want to address that because we don't want to make you expend more resources than you planned, right? So addressing that early on and recognizing that that schedule is built around everybody on site and kind of thinking through that is important. We tend to think about each individual definable task or activity as a separate part of a schedule. So if you start to think about each step or each definable activity that you have in your project, that will help you kind of follow along with that schedule and make sure that it aligns with what you actually bid. Any questions about that?
There's nothing in the chat.
Perfect. I want to make sure I say this. We know that you have to purchase material or order things in advance. We need to know as soon as that happens what that looks like for you, because often our owner general contractor contracts dictate how billing for materials can happen. So we want to make sure that we're planning on our side your invoice to us about billing materials ahead of time if you're ordering things with long lead items, or if you know, hey, this is what's called out in the spec, but actually there's this other product that would meet the same criteria and also meets the same spec and it's faster or easier to get, you let us know. We want to make sure we're partnering with you on this. It can feel a little bit intimidating, but honestly, we're expecting you to inform us if you have orders that you need to make in advance and that you need to be paid for in order to make those orders, because we just need to be communicating that with our clients as well. All right. So that was a lot about project teams and collaborating. To summarize, know your contract, ask lots of questions, take notes. This is simply how I would break that down. But are there any specific other questions about project teams?
It doesn't look like right now, and we have about 40 more minutes, or I'm sorry, 20 minutes.
Perfect. We're gonna be perfectly fine.
Awesome.
All right, so I'm biased because I'm an administrator, and I feel like that gives me a little bit of unique insight on what snags people a lot of times in our public works projects, and that often is just the paperwork. So I'm going to go over specifically kind of what admin looks like in public works, because it's a little bit more intense than can be anticipated sometimes. And not having your paperwork in order can really slow down a project execution. You can be an expert in your field and you know how to do the work, but if you can't manage the documentation, it could really hinder your ability to be successful. So just gonna go over what an admin does, why you should focus on it, and then what to kind of think about as you're planning for your binder, that thing that you want to have ahead of time when you start a project. Okay, just so you know what an admin does from the contractor's perspective, because a lot of people don't know what I do. I'm responsible for sending all the paperwork to you. So I'll send you the contracts to process. I will send you any change orders that might happen. Anything that comes from contracts will come from me. I also manage all the necessary paperwork for public works. So that's prevailing wage documentation, that's intents and affidavits, all of that stuff. And I'm your point of contact between your company and Centennial's project teams. So I'm often the first point of contact for you to get to work with our teams here, but I also act as a communication intermediary at times for our project teams, depending on what the kinds of questions are, or the kinds of conversations are. Why focus on admin? I've done this job now for 3 years, and here's what I've seen. If you don't have the proper documentation, you could have a delay to the start of work. You might not be able to begin work if you don't have your safety paperwork in place, or you don't have other documents in place. You might have to stop work if your insurance certificate expires during a project and I don't have a new one. You will not be allowed on site. That can delay work. You might not be able to access the work site because you don't have proper badging or other criteria. You might not get paid as quickly because of delays in billing and payment processes, because I need certain paperwork to be in place. And you could actually be barred from working on public works projects in the future if you don't manage that documentation. So we really want to make sure that this is underpinning everything else that you're doing. So I would start with a couple of documents. First of all, I would have a customer project information template, and I'll show you what that looks like in a minute. I would have an internal project information template. That's like where you're keeping who's in charge of payroll and who's in charge of the site and who's working on the site, those kinds of things, so that you have that listed somewhere in case you're out for some reason or something happens and someone else needs to step in for you. A current W-9 form, you're almost always going to be asked for that, so keeping it on hand is a good thing. You'll need your UBI number, oftentimes, to be pretty readily available, so keeping that written down somewhere is a good thing. And then contact information for your insurance company when you have to request an insurance certificate, and or your surety. If you have to get a bond, you'll know ahead of time. But keeping that information readily available will be important to keeping the ball rolling. So this is a customer project information template. It seems kind of crazy, but I actually get these emailed to me quite a bit by subcontractors who've done a lot of work on job contracts. I will fill these out for subcontractors, and I'm happy to do that. If you're feeling nervous about sending this to your general contractor because you haven't established rapport, you can fill this out yourself by calling and asking these questions. We often get people doing that too. But these are the kinds of things you need to know about the site. So that would be things like where the project is, what's the address, how you gain access. Do you need to be escorted onto the site, or can you just freely access the site? Who's the project manager who's running the show in your contractor's office? How do you get a hold of them? Who's the superintendent on site? How do you get a hold of them? And who do you contact for safety paperwork or safety concerns or training or anything like that? When it comes to working at the port, you'll need to know, do you need badging? Do you need to have a background check? Is there specific training around being on the tarmac or something else like that that you need to know? I would write it down. If there's a point of contact for access or specialty requirements, who that person is. It's frequently me, by the way. And then accounting details, things that can kind of trip people up. Where do you send your paperwork? What email address does it go to? Is there a place you have to upload stuff? Most subcontractors will accept things by email, but sometimes there are unique requirements. Do you have to have additional forms besides just your own invoice? And then, where do you get that information? You'll need to know if it's a prevailing wage or certified payroll required project. If it's a job contract, it is those things, but it's worth noting. And then you'll need to know if you need to use a specific portal like LNI's contractor portal or LCP tracker or something else to document your work. I also write down the intent number for when I have to file my intent on the website, the LNI portal. I will also note if retention's being withheld. Typically, it's not. With Centennial contracts, we almost never have retention. We've never had retention in the Seattle office for sure, but some contractors might. And then what that percentage would be. And then if there's a deadline, I have a date I have to have certain documents uploaded in order for our accounting team to process them for the month. So if there's that deadline, you want to know it in advance so you can make sure you get your billing in on time and that we don't have any delays in payment or cash flow. Also, if the project is taxable, meaning there's sales tax, or tax exempt, meaning there is no sales tax charged, and whether or not you can use a reseller's permit. That gets a little complicated. So if you have questions about it, just ask the person, usually me, about it, and they can help you out. I don't want to go too much in detail, but it is worth noting if you have a taxable versus non-taxable project. Typically, they're going to be taxable. Your contract will literally say if it's taxable or non-taxable when you sign it too. Any questions about this template?
Cory, I've got a question. What is the purpose of this template is one, and then the other one is like, it seems like if I'm a sub, like a lot of this information actually like the GC or like, like Centennial, whoever has. So yeah, it's interesting that the sub is filling this all out. So maybe getting to the purpose and
Yeah. So all of this information, everything I listed here is something that has come up that has delayed a project in the past because this information wasn't known or wasn't shared clearly with everybody. So you might know as the person who bid the work these details, but maybe your office staff or your foreman doesn't know this information, and that can slow down documentation. But also, I would highly encourage you to send this out. I receive these all the time from subcontractors we regularly work with, and I fill this out for them. So it's not something you have to do. It's certainly something you can call and just get this information or write it down from your contract. But I would have this template readily available for every project so you have a quick reference sheet. So because you're running multiple projects, you have multiple things going on in your life, you don't want to keep all of that in your brain, and you certainly don't want any of the things on this sheet to stop you from being able to do work, right? And so this is a way to capture it all in one place so that anyone who's working on your project can see that same information. If you're sick or you had, some reason you can't be in the office, someone else can pick up the pieces and continue work for you. That's why I encourage this kind of template. And again, you don't have to record all of this. These are just things that I have noticed in my 3 years have come up as reasons that payment was delayed or projects were delayed or work had to be demobilized and remobilized, and those are all costs, right, that are associated and could be on you, right? So we want to avoid those things if possible.
that's really
I think we recommend something similar to this, even at the bidding stage where you're trying to make a bid, no bid decision. It helps to kind of know some of this information. I had a client the other day who bid a job, a very simple street sweeper job, and he didn't ask if it was a prevailing wage job. He didn't realize who the main customer was. It was to a prime who didn't mention that, and so he bid it without prevailing wage. And so just having kind of a checklist of all the things that might be important to know will turn into this later. So anyway, it's a nice tool that we recommend too. Thanks.
Absolutely. And if that does happen, by the way, because it does happen for us, we've had subcontractors not realize that when they bid, let your prime know is right away, because that's something that we can address right away. It's not something you want to not realize and then end up down the line having to deal with for sure.
Casey had a question about where specifically does the contract normally state if the job is taxable or not?
At the very top of our contract document, right next to your name and your contact information, it will say taxable, Washington State taxable or tax exempt. And then there will be details on the first page, usually under requirements, that state whether you have to share tax information like sales tax information on purchases or not. But that will be really apparent on the first page. If it's not apparent, I can't speak for all contractors, ask, because they will need to know too. When I get an award from a client, I have to know that information right away so that I can put it into my system correctly. So they should be able to give you a really clear answer right away if it's not clear on the paperwork. But mine will say it right at the top. So,
Great.
of course. Thank you, Casey.
About 10 minutes, Cory, go ahead.
All right. So, I would also have an internal project template. This can look different for anybody, depending on the type of work you do. But I would say if you have a different number that you assigned to a project, because I have a 6-digit number that I give to each project, and I'll send you, everything I send you will have that project number attached to it. If yours is different, write it down next to each other, because oftentimes I will get questions from billing departments about a project that's using your project number and not mine, and I don't know where it comes from. So that information gets lost, and it takes me a while to find information. It takes you a while to find information. So if you have a different way of numbering things or referencing things, write that down. If you have a person who's going to be responsible for all documents, anything that gets sent out, write that down, and so that they know what they need to do. Who's going to be responsible for being on site? Who's going to be the main contact that our teams reach out to for people on site? Who's going to be in charge of signing documents or change orders, approving that? Maybe it's just you. Maybe there's someone else that's helping you. Maybe you are going to be out sick and need someone else to handle it. Who's going to be your accounts receivable contact? Have you shared that information with your prime? And who will be dealing with certified payroll? Often these two people are the same person, but they don't have to be. Knowing these details in advance, even if you don't write it down, I suggest writing it down. But even if you don't, knowing these details will save you a headache later on when I start to ask you for a bunch of things. Any questions about that? Awesome. Okay. I'm not going to talk a bunch about this because we're running a little bit out of time and I'm a gabber, but public works requirements mean that you have to file intents and affidavits. One is a statement of intent to pay prevailing wage through LNI's website, and the other is the affidavit or statement that you did pay that wage. In addition to that, you'll have to have your certified payrolls on the website. So you need to make sure you have kind of a knowledge of that. You do have to go through classes. I think there's 5 trainings you have to do through LNI before you're able to even file these things. So make sure you're thinking about that and that you know how that process works. I will not be able to pay your first progress payment unless we have an intent in place or intent filed, or at least you can give me a receipt, because sometimes LNI is slow to process things. I need proof that you've filed that intent. And I also won't be able to give you final payment until I have proof that your certified payroll and your affidavit is in place. So you definitely don't want to get caught off guard and then not get paid because I can't issue payment because I don't have these things. So keeping those things in mind. If you're working in a job, you know if it's prevailing wage, hopefully, or not. And you understand what prevailing wage is. But in case you're not sure, it's just the standard hourly pay and benefits and overtime for workers in that city. We will put our prevailing wage determination date on the contract so you know which wage date applies. But those dates do change as like data gets incorporated or updated. And then you want to make sure that you understand your labor classifications. We had one issue where someone working for the port did inside painting and outside painting. Those are 2 different labor classifications. They're 2 different prevailing wage rates. It's very confusing at the end to take care of that. So know ahead of time what kinds of work you're doing and where that falls. And if you have questions about payroll records or anything like that, ask your prime. I will sometimes not be able to release payments because I don't have certified payrolls for the last several weeks. And so I can't actually release that because I have to provide these payrolls to the port when I do billing and things like that too. When you request a certificate of insurance from your insurance provider, make sure that you pay attention to the sample that your prime sends you, because not having the exact language, and this is frustrating, can delay whether or not I can accept that certificate. And then if you don't have a certificate in place, you can't be on site. So make sure that you're paying attention. This is the actual language the port requires every person working on site having in their certificate of insurance. So I literally read through your certificate of insurance. If this is not word for word there, then I have to send it back, and then you have to sometimes pay additional fees to have it reissued again. So making sure that you're holding your insurance agent accountable for getting that right the first time will save you a headache. And I'm gonna skip through. Tech tips. Because we only have a few minutes left, I want to just say really quickly, your phone is not a sufficient place to handle all your paperwork. It's okay in the moment, but you really can't run everything from your phone. It's unfortunate, but there's just too much paperwork. So use your computer. Make sure you have a way to save and edit files and attach files to emails. You know how to do all of that. Make sure you have a file storage system somewhere that you're storing everything that's consistent. Make sure you save files in the cloud, because if they disappear, you can re-find them again. And also other people can access them if they need to, or you can access them from your phone. And then use a standard naming convention for each file, so you're not like you don't have to remember what you called something in the moment when it's stressful or you need to find something quickly. So there's a couple of examples on screen that I use. Centennial has very specific naming conventions. It's incredible. We have 6 pages of naming conventions. Yours don't need to be that intense, but do have something that you use consistently. And then make sure you're focused on managing communication from the start to end. Think about how you're going to deal with all the emails. Think about how you're going to deal with all the paperwork and how you're going to communicate. Choose whatever system works for you, but use it regularly. It doesn't work if you start a spreadsheet and then only fill it in 20% of the time. Make sure, I say that from experience as a person who's done that. Make sure you're using it regularly. And then remember, we're here to help. Your GC wants you to succeed because they succeed when you succeed. So please ask questions. I don't think anyone has ever been, in trouble for asking questions ahead of time and getting clarification. And I finished a minute early, which is surprising for me. Are there any final questions?
Leslie has her hand up.
Okay.
Just a real quick question. I put in there the portal link for your subcontractors. And once they get registered there, are they privy to some of your internal digital resources for doing this?
Yeah, so we have digital resources that are available to subcontractors who aren't, but also once you're in our system, you can ask for additional resources and I can get those to you. In addition, you will be in our system for any office who would be doing work in the area. So you might be contacted from more than one office to do work for us. Any other questions?
I've got a question. Well, first off, thank you so much for the presentation. It was so detailed and so practical about like, okay, you won, now what? My question is more about like, okay, you haven't won yet. You're not even connected with Centennial. Well, what are typically the types of firms that you do end up working with? That's my first question. The second is, what is the process for folks who want to be considered for work with Centennial? What is that? What does that look like? And then how are firms then selected by Centennial to be on specific projects?
Perfect. So first of all, if you want to work with us, email me. Email works, you can call me, but I'm going to end up emailing you documents. Typically we need a W-9, We need some basic information about what your certifications are, your license number, those kinds of things. And then we'll share with you some general insurance requirements that we have. Ours are pretty consistent across the industry, so whatever, that will be true for almost every firm. And then also, in terms of, you aren't sure yet if you're going to be able to do work with us because you don't know if we use your trade. Like, cool thing about jock contracting is one day we could be, refurbishing bathrooms, and the other day we could be mounting a giant hummingbird sculpture. And both of those things can be simultaneously true. So even if you are a niche subcontractor, we still could use your services. We consistently use general contractors, civil engineers, electricians, mechanical contractors. Those are trades that we consistently use almost every single time. But there are lots of situations where we have very niche contractors as well. Once you're in our system, you go onto our bid solicitation sheets. Our PMs know to reach out to you. If it's a small project, typically they will reach out directly to all the firms that we have that are, provide those types of services for that scope of work, and they will send you a detailed package so you can bid. If it's a larger project, we might reach out through Building Connected or another platform that allows us to reach out to larger numbers of subcontractors. And you also can just, give us a call and see what we might have coming up, because if we know that you're looking for the work, we can keep you top of mind. Sometimes, things are very quick. We want to make sure that we're reaching out to as many people as possible. We want to make sure you're on those lists and that we know that you are currently doing business and currently still interested in doing business with us.
Gotcha, Cory. So it sounds like the first step, if they're not already in front of y'all, is to email you and get you all the information that you asked for. And then, yeah, if there's work that seems relevant to them and in the kind of trade, then they'll be reached out to with is it an invitation to bid, something like that?
Yeah, you'll get sometimes it'll be a phone call and then a follow-up email. Sometimes it'll be an email first. Our PMs, it can depend on the urgency of a project. Sometimes we've had a project where we got the alert for a need to do something on Friday and it had to be done by Monday. So that would be a phone call. If it's not something that with that quick a turnaround, it would probably be an email invitation that you would receive from our PMs.
And then that bidding process, like what do you require for the bids that are submitted? Is it, maybe that's a whole nother session. Yeah, but I'm curious about that.
It is sort of another session. It depends on the project, but the bidding process is something that when we onboard you, you do a subcontractor orientation with us.
Okay.
And we'll actually have our PM or another individual who works more directly with that process walk you through what to expect from Centennial and what we're looking for. And we always reiterate that you need to incorporate in your bid all this paperwork that we talked about today. We're expecting that. So you'll have a detailed orientation beforehand if you have questions about the bidding process.
Great. Yeah. So once a firm sends over all this stuff to you, they're onboarded and have more of that information about how to bid. And you'll have the resources that they need to bid.
Absolutely. Yeah. Any other questions? I'm sorry, guys. I kept you over 5 minutes.
This is fantastic, Cory. Thank you. And I just wanted to say, Cory's with Centennial, and Centennial has a reputation for doing a wonderful job onboarding new subcontractors that might be new to job contracting or new to public works in general, and then keeping them long term. So there's other job holders as well that do a nice job too. And so once you're in with one of them, look at the other ones and see what opportunities they have, because it'll be a somewhat similar experience with the type of work and the type of submittals that you'll experience. So you have some efficiencies there with your firm.
Absolutely.
One more question
I wanted to
from me. Sorry.
What's that?
And one more question from me.
Sure.
You had a slide, Cory, with different agencies on it. So it's
Mhm.
like once somebody is registered with you, they're not
Mhm.
only called for port projects, you all are working with other agencies
Yeah.
that they might be considered for. Is that correct?
Absolutely, yeah. We work with multiple state agencies and municipalities. And so once you're in our system, we're considering you for any project. It could be a port project, it could be a Bellevue project. We can reach out to you. You don't have to bid, but you will be considered for any project, for any contract that we have where your services match the scope of work.
Great, thank you, Cory. On your screen now, you should be looking at the Advanced Port Gen schedule of upcoming trainings. This was the first of several. Next week, we're doing prevailing wage compliance with expert speaker Wendy Ortman, who's also a been there, done that type expert speaker. She can understand kind of what it's like to be in the shoes of a small business, because she is a small business, and kind of help you understand that prevailing wage. And then we'll move on to indirect cost rates and some other topics. So please hop into the website and register for those if you have interest in any of them. Leslie or I will follow up very shortly with the slide deck and the survey. We really appreciate your feedback so that we can continually provide quality training to you all. Cory, I appreciate your time and talent today. Clearly, you care a lot about ensuring subcontractor success within Centennial, and we appreciate your time today.
Of course. Thank you guys. Thank you for attending, and I hope you have a wonderful day.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, Emily. Take care.
Thank you, Cory.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.